Thank you for coming tonight on this lovely Valentine's Day. Logan, did you get a box of chocolates for your favorite girlfriend? Good. He shook his head yes. I was about to say stay away from them right now, but hey, way to go. Way to go. Jesse, did you give your sister flowers? Why not? She's your sister. It's Valentine's Day. You got to make her feel special. Hey, perfect. That works. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look again at the book of Daniel. Can y'all say Daniel? That's exactly right, Daniel. But tonight we're not talking about Daniel specifically, but we're going to talk about Daniel's buddies. Because it's important to have buddies in your life, right? Friends, people that you can count on, people that you can play sports with, people that you can just kick it with at the coffee shop, right? You got to have friends. I think it's important for all of us to have friends. So we're talking about friends tonight. But before I get to that point, first I want to share with you my own personal story of a cause and effect relationship. No, I'm not talking about a love relationship, a boyfriend or girlfriend. Not talking about that. But I'm talking about the relationship that when you do something, something happens in response. Cause and effect. Y'all have learned about that in English before, right? Yes. Cause and effect. All right. So check this out. I am a little scrawny little guy who is fast but not really fast enough. But I wanted to be an athlete and I wanted to play on the varsity squad, right? But the thing was, I was not talented enough to be able to go and to compete and to play a lot just on my own abilities. Now, I know you think to yourself, that's not true. I've seen this guy play ping pong, and he's a beast. Right, Keenan? You might say, Dustin, I played in the Turkey Bowl with you in Thanksgiving, and you were just dropping dimes all up and down the field. Maybe. Now, you might think to yourself, Dustin, I've seen you run, and it kind of looks funny. Maybe you've seen me do athletic things, but I promise you, I can say this with 100% certainty, I was not the best athlete. I was good enough, but what set me over the top compared to most people was how hard I worked, Cheyenne. Because I knew that if I was going to start on my own power, I would probably be second string, I would probably be third string. But if I would outwork everybody else, I could start, and I could play, and I could score points, and I could make layups, and I can throw a pass. So I had to outwork people. And so that's exactly the mentality that I chose all the way throughout high school. My freshman year, I said, you know what? I'm not going to beat Logan Bryan out at receiver, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run harder than he does. I'm going to practice harder than he does. I'm going to do everything the coach asked me to do because I know that that'll make me better. So guess what? Of course, I got to play my freshman year. And then the next year rolls around. This time I'm on JV. And the coaches saw me out just throwing a football with all of our friends. And they said, you know what? He's our quarterback. But would I be quarterback alone or would I have to work at it? I would have to work at it because on my own ability, just not good enough. The next year I break a collarbone. So varsity's not looking good. But guess what? After I get back from the injury, I work hard. I earn a varsity spot my senior year, and then by the time senior year rolls around, I'm playing special teams, playing defense, playing offense. I don't take a step off the field until I mess up a hamstring. Why is that the case? How could I go from being a nothing athlete to all of a sudden not coming off the field my senior year and receiving district honors for my ability? Well, I chalk it up to hard work because I know that on my own talent it wasn't quite good enough. It was all because I would be willing to go the extra mile to outwork somebody else because I had ambition, I had aspirations to be better than my current ability. Cause and effect relationship. Because of my ability to do something, I was able to achieve something. Tonight, I'm not here to talk to you about hard work, although I encourage you all to work hard. But I am here to talk to you about a cause and effect relationship that occurred in the Bible that we can learn from today. It's about three men taking a stand for what they believed in, for being committed to a certain God, that no matter what man said, their commitment to that God would not waver. No, they had a commitment to believe in their God. And no matter where that took them, They would always believe in that God. So tonight we're going to look at the cause and the effect relationship, kind of like what I just mentioned about football and athletics. We're going to look at how their effort had a long-term, lasting effect on their life, how their commitment stood with them through the test of time. Now, I know you're probably thinking, I know who he's talking about. He's talking about the names of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the most fun names to pronounce in the Bible. You have heard this story. You were involved with it in Sunday school. It's a powerful story. But before we actually get to their story, we have to understand their position. You see, these were now men of means. Why were they men of means? Because of Daniel. Because of Daniel's a smart Willie. Because Daniel can interpret dreams. If you look in chapter 2 of Daniel, he interpreted the king's dreams. And so because of that, the king put Daniel in charge of the province of Babylon. And then the next thing you know, he is recruiting his buddies to go on and help in leadership positions in the process. So because of Daniel's ability to follow God, because of the wisdom that God gave Daniel, Daniel was now placed in a position of leadership. And so guess what he does? He says, hey, Shadrach, hey, Meshach, hey, Abednego, I got a job for you. And this job is going to be better than where you're currently at. So that's where we find ourselves at. These men have a great job. That was fun on the screen. It was just bouncing back and forth. Pretty rocking. So we have these men who now have a position of leadership. And so when you have a position of leadership, guess what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to honor the king. You got to follow the king's instruction. When he puts down a decree, when he puts down an order, you just naturally do what he says. Because if not, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We understand that principle. If Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego listen to a king and they decide not to follow his instructions, guess that what? That erodes all foundation. When your leaders can't follow the leader, next thing you know, you don't have a country that's rocking and rolling anymore. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here in our own country. And it's sad to say, but when you have people consistently fighting, you don't have any unity. Without unity, you can't push forward to the places you need to go. No, you need that unity. So we have a situation where King Nebuchadnezzar decides that he's going to create this golden statue of himself. And he's going to command everybody in his area to worship that statue anytime they heard the sound of music. Now, for a king, I'm sure that sounds pretty great. A little egotistical, a little bit stuck on themselves. Guys, don't be that way if you want to get a special girl in your life. We'll move on. Alex just looked at me like, okay. King had a bit of an ego problem. Okay? The king liked himself a little bit too much, and so he wanted his entire country to worship him. Probably not the best thing to do, but it's what he did. And so he offered this decree that if anyone doesn't worship me, if they don't worship my statue, I'm going to catch them on fire. And he would go on to do that. And so we have these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. They have a choice to make. They know not to put any god above God. And here we have a king wanting to put himself above God. A man put himself above God. Yes, he's a leader. Yes, he's the king of the country. But he wants to take God and elevate God so that those three men have to worship him instead of their own true God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't like that. They said, you know what? My allegiance lies more to the God who created this universe instead of the man who created this country. So when I hear this music, I'm going to stand for what I believe in. Yes, I know it's going to anger you. I know you're going to be mad at us because we're your leaders. But we got to do what's right. We got to do what's right. Because our God, and his opinion about us, matters more to us than yours. So the music played. Long story short, they didn't bow down to worship the golden statue because they worship the one true God. And then we find tonight's scripture found in Daniel chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. At this time, some astrologers, gotta love the astrologers, right? The people that look to the stars. Astrologers. Darn. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever," worshiping their king, flattering him. "Your majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the God of gold, worship the image of gold. And that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." The astrologers came to the king and said, hey, we have some information. We have some news that you need to know. We're going to throw these guys under the bus. And then they did. They said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't worship your gods. They don't worship your golden image. You're going to throw them into the burning furnace, right? This is what you're going to do." And the king said, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw them in to the burning furnace because they didn't worship me. Because it's all about me. Me." Right? That's probably what the king sounded like. Might not be what he said, but that's what they sounded like. And so we have these leaders who said, "I understand what the king is trying to do, but my God is too important for me. I'm not going to follow through and worship a golden image. That's just against my religion. It's not what I stand for. I'm not going to worship a false idol. I'm not going to worship a false god." So let's fast forward to Daniel chapter 3, 16 through 17. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, talking to the king, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter." Basically, what they're saying is, I know you think this concerns you. It has nothing to do with you. It's a higher purpose, a higher calling. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hands. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Tonight, I want you to understand that these men aren't trying to just shove something down the king's face. You have to admit, they probably go to this king with the utmost respect because they know that their life is in his hands. And so you're not just going to walk into someone's office and say, "King, I know better than you. Here's what's up." No, they had to have some form of respect. They appreciated his leadership. But they also understood that their God was more important to them than what another man said. Their relationship with God did not concern the king. It was only between them and God. Unfortunately, it upset the king, but it really has nothing to do with the king. And so when a king tried to place a law on their life that went contrary to Scripture and their belief system, we have a problem there. They saw the problem, and they were willing to stand for what they believed in, even if it cost them their life. I feel bad for them, because here in America, we're not confronted with those issues. If we stand for God, guess what? We can stand for God. We get to go back home and eat a lovely steak dinner. We get to go home and kiss our baby goodnight. I have an actual baby. She's sweet as can be. So you might not have a baby, but you do have a mom and dad. You do have a brother or sister. You do have a pet puppy dog, and those are lovely. We can do that without the fear of what will happen. These men didn't have that luxury. These men were facing some extreme conditions. So guess what? They tell the king this. The king gets upset. He says, "Fire up the furnace. We're going to throw these 3 men in there, and they're going to die. Matter of fact, the fire's going to be so hot, it's going to kill a couple of my guards in the process. But so be it. That's what they get for not following me." So that's what happens. They tie them up, they throw them in the furnace, and then the next thing you know, the king's saying, hey, didn't we throw 3 people in there? And the guards are like, "Oh, yeah, we did. We threw 3 people in there. Why is there 4? And why is the fourth man? Why does he look like a son of the gods? Suddenly, we find something. Because of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's commitment to God, God prevailed. He was there with them, so much so that the king ordered the people to come back out of the furnace. So they went into the fire, and they came back out of the fire completely unscathed. Not a burn. Their hair didn't even smell bad. They didn't even smell like smoke. They were perfect. Why? Because God sustained them, because they honored him with their commitment to follow him, regardless of the consequences. And then this is what happens. Daniel chapter 3, verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own." Powerful. Completely changed the king's perspective because of their commitment to God. Now, tonight, I'm not saying you're trying to get Donald Trump's approval by the way you live your life. But I can say this. By the way you live your life, you can make a difference on the people around you. Now, we might not be impressing kings the way Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were. But if we stand for our commitment to God in all situations, your mom and dad's going to notice. That person at school is going to notice. That person on the street's going to notice. So are we willing to do that? Here's my point tonight, something I want you to take home with, something I want you to take a snapshot in your mind, something that I want you never to forget. God demonstrates his faithfulness to those who are faithful to him. God demonstrates his faithfulness to those who are faithful to him. So my question is, are we faithful to God? Situations are going to come. The fire of life is going to come. It might not be an actual blazing furnace, but it's going to feel like one. When you are taking a test that you know you didn't study for, it's easy to lift up your head, look at your neighbor's paper, and figure out what that is. But does that act honor God? Now, it's easy that when your friends are outdoors, and whether they're smoking illegal substances or whether they're speeding or they're doing bad things, it's easy to say, peer pressure's real, man. And then you fall short of God's glory. But I think they'll notice even more if you're around them and you say, no, not about that. My commitment to God is much greater than my commitment to you. Now, I know these two illustrations are pretty basic. But let's take a moment and think about more in-depth situations where this could occur. For instance, let's say your whole family is cursing someone that you love and care about. It's easy to go along with your brother and sister. It's easy to go along with your mom and dad. But would God want you to curse someone else? Or would he want you to uplift someone else? Would he want me to uplift somebody else? Yeah, I think we can see how our commitment to God could be tested in a moment like this. You know, in life, you're going to be tested. You're going to have opportunities where you can either stand and fight for God, or you can stand and run away from God. Try to get as far away from him as you possibly can. But how do we respond? Do we go along just to get along? Or do we say, we know the better way, we know the better path, and I'm going to honor that path? What I respect about this unique situation, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew that by standing for God, it could cost them their life. They understood it, and they were okay with it because they knew their commitment mattered, and their commitment to God mattered more than a boy, than a girl, than an athletic career, than an academic career. Their relationship with God mattered more, mattered most. And I pray that we are the same way. That when life gets hard, we stand for God anyways. When people tell us how to live, we look to the Bible for the true source of what life is all about. That we remain faithful to God because that we know that He's going to be faithful to us in the end. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God proved that He was faithful. When the fires of life were raging, He sustained them. He kept them from harm. He kept them from their skin being burned or their hair catching on fire. He kept them safe in this moment. He honored their faithfulness with His faithfulness. And I think if you honor God with your faithfulness tonight, He's going to, in return, offer His faithfulness. He loves you. He cares for you. He believes in you. I don't think He would have sent His Son, Jesus Christ, here to die on the cross if He didn't. He wants to be faithful to you. But in any relationship, you want the other person to care about you just as much as you care about them. That's the definition of a healthy relationship. When you both care about each other. When you care about the other person more than you care about yourself. That's how God is. He cares more about us than His own ego. He cares more about you and what you go through than anything else. That's why He accomplished what He accomplished. It wasn't just so that we can have a nice tag along, something that we can just clip onto our belt loop and carry with us. No, He wanted a relationship with us, a true relationship, so that we look to Him in all situations, so that we honor Him in our commitments. That's what He desires. But is that what we desire? Will we honor God in our commitment to Him? Or will we just be like the rest of this world? It's challenging. But I think if we do honor God with our commitment, man, I can only imagine the blessings that'll flow. So tonight, I want you to think about your commitment. Think about your commitment to God. Think about your relationship with Him. Think about the fires of life. When you're tested, because we will be, what will we do? How will we respond? Who will we become? Will we be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who said, "No, King, I will not worship you. Even if you put me in the burning fire, even if my God doesn't come through, I'm going to worship Him anyways"? Or will we be the opposite, who says, "Yeah, Christianity's great. I'm just along for a free ride, and whatever happens, happens"? Know who you are so that when you're tested, you can withstand that. Cause and effect relationship. Our commitment to God, that effect, that moment, has an eternal conclusion. What is that cause and effect relationship? What does that look like in your life?